All right. Good morning. Good morning. We're going to start with theme number 4. Okay. We're going to start with theme number 4, which is the president, the governor, and the ministers, central as well as states. Now, we will do the vice president in connection with the Rajya Sabha, as the vice president is the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha ex officio. So it will make more sense to cover vice presidential powers in that context. So these are our 3 primary topics that we are going to be covering as far as theme number 4 is concerned. Right? Now, if you all have checked the Google Drive, I have uploaded the printable versions also. For those of you who want to take the printouts, you can do that. They are available on the drive. In the mains folder, in the subfolder of updated notes, you will find a subfolder called printable versions and printer friendly notes, which is a white background and black text, has been uploaded on that also. Now, we are going to be studying the president and the governor together, combined, and in a comparative format, because it will always be easier to remember, to correlate, and therefore understand the differences between the two. Right? So, our first topic is the president and the governor, and therefore let us clearly outline what our curriculum and what our scope of study is going to be. Now, as we understand layer 1, which is conceptual and factual, and therefore important for the prelims, and layer 2, which is analytical in nature and therefore important for the mains. Now, let's have a look. See, as far as the mains is concerned, okay, as far as the mains is concerned, we must understand this, that president and governor are mentioned in the 6th point of the mains syllabus, where it says structure, organizing, and functioning of the executive and the judiciary, ministries, and departments of the government. So, in the 6th point, which it says structure, organization, and functioning of the executive. So, this is something which is a direct part of the mains syllabus. Okay. And in the 2nd point of the main syllabus, which is challenges to the federal structure. These are the correlated, very specific lines as far as the mains syllabus is concerned. So what is it that we are going to be covering just from here, and what is it that we will not be covering in these themes. So that is also very important. So let's understand. This theme is just about the president and the governor and nothing else. So we will understand their eligibility, we will understand their election / appointment, we will understand impeachment / removal. The removal of the president is called impeachment. It's a technical term that we use so that there is a sanctity to the office. We will understand oath. We will then understand the powers. In these, we'll broadly understand certain legislative powers. We will also understand very specifically veto powers. We will very broadly understand ordinances. Very broadly, because we do them in detail much later. And we will also understand certain pardoning powers. Okay, this is broadly that we will cover. And of course, then a comparison of a broad comparison of the houses, of the offices. Now, as far as the means is concerned, we will understand an analysis of holding and losing office, thereby understanding what reforms can be made to the election of the president or the appointment of the governor. Second, we'll understand very clearly an analysis of the pardoning powers of the president and also compare it with the governor. And third, we will also do an analysis of the veto powers in a fair amount of detail. Fourth, we will look at the larger reforms to both of these offices. Now, this is broadly what we're going to be doing. Now, you must understand what is it that we are not going to be doing here. What is it that we're going to be doing in other subsequent themes. Now, first, a comparison of presidential versus parliamentary form of government. This is a very specific mains topic. We will cover this in our next theme number 5, when we understand and analyze the parliament. 2, the deeper analysis of ordinances. Are they good? Are they bad? How can we make them better? We will actually cover this as a topic under separation of powers in the subsequent themes. Because ordinances are not just about the president. It is about the idea that a law has been made, even though it's temporary in nature, by passing the lawmakers, which is the president. Okay, and of course corresponding to the governor, right? Extremely important. So these are the two specific topics that we will cover in a fair amount of detail in the other two themes as far as our polity is concerned. But here, this is all that we will cover as far as theme number 4 is concerned. Third, though emergencies are promulgated by the president, but we will study the emergency as an extension of center state relations in again a subsequent theme. I hope this is very clear. I hope you understand this. I hope you understand exactly what we are going to be doing. Okay? Right? So we'll come to those things. Okay? Good. So this is the larger ecosystem. This is how we're going to be preparing. I think it's going to take us 2 to 2.5 days to finish theme number 4, depending on the pace of the class. Okay? So let us start. We are going to be discussing the president and the governor, and if we have to understand where have they been given in the constitution respectively, the president is in part 5, whereas the governor is in part 6, and articles 52 to 73 deal with the president and powers related to the president, whereas articles 153 to 162 deal with the powers pertaining to the governor. Alright? Now we are going to do layer 1 first. Once we are done with layer 1, we will do a deeper analysis of layer 2 extending up to the finishing parts. So let us start. And we will discuss layer 1, as I said, in a comparative basis. We will discuss layer 1 from a comparative basis, which means we'll study the president and the governor simultaneously. Now, as far as the prelims is concerned, in the history of this exam, you have never been asked a specific article number from this topic. The only times they actually ask you article numbers, and that also headline articles, is with fundamental rights, directive principles and duties. That also in a very limited manner. But here, no article numbers are asked as far as the prelims is concerned. But in the mains, it is always a wise idea to quote the relevant article numbers. Okay? This is actually the broad basis. You don't get questions beyond this. And once we are done with layer 1, I will solve some previous year questions with you, and you will be able to see how you are able to answer most of the questions that we would be able to solve just after layer 1. Okay? In the mains, and this is very interesting, and if you pay attention, in the mains, there has never been a dedicated question on the governor very specifically ever since the pattern has changed since 2013. And there is a very clear reason as to why. Because it is not expressly mentioned in your main syllabus. So, of course, we will analyze the office of the governor. We will understand what are the challenges with the office of the governor, and we'll also look at certain reforms such as Sarkaria Commission and Punchi Commission and Administrative Reforms Commission. We'll do the analysis where it's needed, but it has never been asked in the mains, which also drives home the point that you must read the syllabus and do a very, very detailed study of the past year papers, at least 2013 onwards, as far as the mains is concerned, so that you understand the larger kind of questions that the UPSC usually asks. Okay, so something is important and something is fundamental is this. So when a lot of people ask me, so do we have to do the Sarkaria Commission and the Punchi Commission reforms in detail with respect to the office of the governor, I ask them a counter question. Where have you seen this question directly in the mains? Of course, in a larger answer on federalism, this may be a paragraph in your answers or a subheading and some points in your answers. But I do not see a full-fledged direct question on the governor's office as far as you and I are concerned. I hope this is clear, right? Okay. Now, let us start. We are going to now look at the president and the governor. Now that we're getting into the domain of the parliament, we're getting to the domain of the legislature and the executive, I thought it is an appropriate time for me to discuss certain broad concepts and certain terms which are related to elections. Okay. Now, of course, we understand this that the governor is an appointed office. Is the appointed office a well-appointed office or not? We'll come to that. You don't even have to spend more than 30 seconds on it. The president, on the advice of the Council of Ministers, appoints the governor of a state. And by convention, the chief minister of the state is also consulted by the president. But none of the chief minister's advice is binding on the president. It's a 30-second concept. Because the governor is an appointed office. Now, of course, why is the governor appointed office? Because of rule number 2, center stronger than the states. Are we appointing the governors in the right manner? Are they unbiased? What are the reforms that we can make to the appointment? We'll do that in layer 2. But in one line, governor is an appointed office appointed by the president on advice of the Council of Ministers, and the president also consults the chief minister of the concerned state. This is all that there is to the appointment of the governor. We'll come to that later. But the president and the vice president, the Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha, the MLAs, the MLCs, they're all elected offices. So now that we're stepping into this domain, I think it's an appropriate time for us to understand certain broad concepts. We'll keep specifying them. We'll keep applying them when the time is right, when we have to do this in the right manner. Okay, so let us start and let's get these broad concepts extremely clear. Okay, so we remember first, you remember something called a direct election, and you remember something called an indirect election, right? A direct election and an indirect election. These are very simple meanings. I'll reiterate them for you. A direct election is where the citizen is directly choosing the representative or the office, and then the office is supposed to perform whatever action they have to. For example, Lok Sabha elections, state legislative assembly elections, these are all direct elections. We choose our MP of the Lok Sabha, we choose our MLA of the legislative assembly, right? Okay, now with indirect elections, let's understand this. Indirect elections is where the citizen chooses the representative or the office, and this representative then participates in another election for another representative, who will then take certain actions in due of the office. So for example, presidential elections, vice presidential elections, Rajya Sabha elections, state legislative council elections are indirect. In fact, state legislative council elections are indirect also, and some parts of it are direct also. So some MLCs are chosen directly, some MLCs are chosen indirectly. right? So president, vice president, Rajya Sabha, these are the simpler, explanations of what is called an indirect election. Okay. Then there is a word called electorate. Okay. Now then there is a word called electorate. Electorate very simply means the voting population. Electorate very simply means the voting population. That is it. It very simply means the voting population. Okay. Whoever, so for example, the electorate in the upcoming UP elections are going to be the voters of Uttar Pradesh. So that is what is called electorate. That is why we often say we need an informed electorate, we need an aware electorate, we need an electorate which is, courageous, which is free, which can't be bought, and so on and so forth. Okay, do we understand this? Is this clear? All right. Now, just give me a second, it's a little hot. Okay, so this is what is called as an electorate. Now, then there is something called an electoral college. Then there is something called an electoral college. You will often see this word. An electoral college is nothing but a form in what is mostly used as the voters of an indirect election. The voters of an indirect election. So that is why you will say that in a president's election, an electoral college consists of elected Lok Sabha MPs, elected Rajya Sabha MPs, and elected MLAs of state legislatures and union territories with legislatures. So this is called an electoral college. The voters of an indirect election. This is your electoral college who will then perform the final election. Okay, so this is what is called as an electoral college. So these are broadly how this is done. Now we come to the next layer. This is very, very important. We understand that if banks are to money, then democracy is to population. It would be appropriate to draw this kind of an analogy because if banks are to money, then democracy is to population, which basically means that the institution of banking is dependent on the financial resources, and the institution of democracy is dependent on the people who live in the democracy, as highlighted by the preamble, that the citizens of a country are in fact its ultimate sovereign, and also reinforces what is called social contract. Right? Now, let's understand this, which means you can calculate your amount of money with whatever money is in circulation. That is why in economics you will study something called money supply. When you're trying to figure out the amount of money which is available in a country, right? Then you also have other indicators such as GDP, you have inflation, you have so many other economic indicators which tell you the amount of money which is available. You will have foreign exchange reserves, you will have your capital account, current account, and so on and so forth. So there are enough calculations and a multitude of calculations that you can do to determine the financial strength of the country, on the basis of which you will also be able to determine your banks, right? Now, the only determinant of population is called the census of India. The only determinant of population is called the census of India. Now you must understand why is this important. The census of India is going to help you in two ways. First, it will help you decide the quantum of seats. It will help you decide the quantum of seats, and secondly, it will also help you understand the territorial area or the area of constituencies. Right? Constituencies. These are the two important jobs that a census does. And we can use two different censuses to make our base. Like for example, GDP has a base year, right? And that base year is what you will use to reflect comparisons. Very recently, the Finance Commission has also changed its base year to the 2011 census. And that is essentially so that we're able to distribute resources. And the South Indian states largely have a problem with this because they have worked so hard and they have their populations under control. But the North Indian states have larger populations as reflected in the 2011 census. So therefore, they will end up being given a higher share in taxes and proceeds as recommended by the Finance Commission. So South Indian states are actually negatively rewarded for the work that they have done as far as population control is concerned. So do we understand this? Is this okay? Right? Now, if we understand this carefully, now we can look at what is it that we're referring to. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to first show you something which happens within a state, and then I'll show you the whole thing, right? So let us say this is a state, I'll call it Amoeba Pradesh. So this state, let us say, is called Amoeba Pradesh, right? Now, Amoeba Pradesh is going to have an X number of people here. Now we are only looking at it from a representative point of view, not an administrative point of view. You would remember we've discussed this. Every state has two divisions, representative and administrative. Representative is your MP, MLA and all that. And your administrative is districts, blocks, villages, subdivisions and things like that. Now let's understand this as clearly as we can. So let us say we're talking about a specific set. Now, let us say that we are going to have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We are going to have a total of 6, let us say these are MP constituencies, 6 Lok Sabha seats. We are going to have a total of 6 Lok Sabha seats. This is the quantum, right? This quantum will also have to be fixed on the basis of a census. And this is the area of the constituency, right? Area of the constituency. As you can see, constituency number 3 is bigger in size than constituency number 1. And there is a reason here. The reason is that our election rules and election laws are very clear that the constituencies must have approximately the same number of people, right? The constituencies must have approximately the same number of people. Otherwise, it would be unfair that one MP represents 5,000 people, the other MP represents just 500 people. So we have to make sure that our boundaries of a constituency more or less have the same number of people in it. And if you want to get into technical details, you get a 15% margin as per Election Commission of India rules, because it is statistically impossible to have the exact number of people same across constituencies within a state. right? So that is of course the case. Anyways, so the idea here is that the size of the constituencies can differ depending again on population, right? And the quantum of the seats will also depend on the population. Larger the population of the state, more will be the number of seats that the state will have to the Lok Sabha. Now, this quantum of seats is an interstate concept, right? Because it's an all India concept, it's a national concept. This is intrastate, that the constituencies have to be divided in such a way that the population of the state is equally divided across the constituencies with a 15% margin, right? Now, that is why, for example, let us say suddenly there is an IT hub, right? An IT hub which comes up here, okay? So obviously there is going to not only be a lot of interstate migration, there is also going to be a migration from within the state also, right? People from constituency 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 would want to come here, right? Now as a result, the density of population will increase in constituency number 6. So this X figure is going to be imbalanced. So what we will have to do is, we will have to shorten constituency number 6 and adjust the next adjust the boundaries with the rest of it, so that this number remains the same. This internal readjustment of constituencies due to population changes is called delimitation. This is called delimitation, okay? Delimitation. This internal change is called delimitation, right? This was in the news with respect to delimitation of J&K, and delimitation is conducted by a delimitation commission, and it is done on a state by state basis, and you look at the census, so to speak. Now interestingly, and we must get this part right, interestingly, the orders of the delimitation commission under ordinary circumstances are immune from judicial review. That means the orders of the delimitation commission cannot be challenged in a court of law. They cannot be questioned in a court of law. Now the answer to that is a simple rule number 3, which is separation of powers. It's a simple rule number 3, which is separation of powers. Here we are deciding how the elections are going to take place. Here we are deciding how the elections are going to take place. We are not deciding the outcome of the elections. If the judiciary could poke its nose into this technical exercise as well, then we also have the right to question how the judges are being, appointed. And the last time we did that, the judiciary blowed the trumpet of independent judiciary and struck the 99 constitutional amendment, which is also called the National Judicial Appointments Commission, and struck it down independently. So you can't have what we can't, and we can't have what you can't. So if you don't want us to interfere in the way you work, you also should not interfere in the way that we are organizing ourselves for the election to happen. As it is, once the election is completed, and if people are unhappy with the outcome of the result, they can go to your high courts and file election petitions. It's not as if you don't have a say. If you didn't have a say, then you would have not been able to declare the election of the Prime Minister of India invalid in Rai Bareli, which eventually led to the imposition of emergencies in 1975. So it's not as if you don't have the powers. We are asking you, let the election happen. Then you decide what we can do and what we can't do. If the election does not happen only, we are just preparing our constituencies, then what is the problem? Now, here is the thing. This is the intention. But now this doesn't happen in India as much as it happens in the US. Now, if you are a smart person, then what you will do is, you will organize your constituencies in such a way, that in each constituency, the majority vote bank is supporting your party. That in each constituency, the majority vote bank is supporting your party. If you were smart enough, you could, use this, and you would know that this is an internal readjustment, which means this internal readjustment, which is delimitation, will not be able to be under the Supreme Court scrutiny, which means you can organize your constituencies in such a manner that the maximum number of people, the majority number of people in your constituencies are going to favor your political party. This abuse of delimitation has a word for it, and that word is called gerrymandering. This word is called gerrymandering. Okay? Gerrymandering. This is very popular in the US. It often happens in the US because a lot of times US being a federal state, in the sense that the states have more powers, the states can make these internal changes. In India, because of rule number 2, all elections to the center and the state, which basically means President, Vice President, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, State Legislative Assembly, State Legislative Council, all of these elections are conducted only and only by the Election Commission of India. Okay? By the Election Commission of India. And this is largely because of rule number 2, center stronger than the states. Alright? Okay. So we've understood so far the role which is played by the census in the way elections are conducted. Now let's understand, how does this work? What is it that we are trying to do? Okay? Now, as far as the quantum of seats are concerned, we have fixed the number of seats to the Lok Sabha, to the Rajya Sabha, and we're talking about the total number. Okay? The total number of seats to the Lok Sabha, to the Rajya Sabha, to the assemblies, respectively to the council, they've all been fixed. And the basis that we've used is the 1971 census. Okay? The basis that we've used is the 1971 census. Now, the reason that the 1971 census has been used is largely because 1971 is the perfect midpoint, is the perfect sort of a median of the ups and downs of population growth in the country. And the area, which means, for example, here we had to reduce the size of the 6th constituency because the 6th constituency in the state, because the population had increased, and then we had to increase the size of the 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd and 1, because there were more people coming in to the 6th constituency within the state. So this can be changed, this is no problem. And the size of constituencies are the area of the constituencies are based on the 2001 census. Okay, the area is on 2001 census. This any population, even for presidential elections, all is based on the 1971 census. And we are supposed to follow the 1971 census till 2026. We are supposed to follow the 1971 census till 2076, which means that 1971 census and the population figures of 1971 census will determine the number of seats in the Lok Sabha, for example, till 2026. Also true for the Rajya Sabha as well. And in 2026, we are hoping, there is no clarification on this, we are hoping that the 2011 census would be the base of it. 2021 will not be, because pandemic year and all of those things, is not the case. One second, Shashi, don't interrupt me in the middle of the class. This is not a personal tuition. Vaibhav and Shashi, behave yourselves. Shashi keh rahe, chairman of delimitation commission is Supreme Court judge. Then involvement of judicial body is also there. Firstly, Shashi, don't mislead the class. A sitting Supreme Court judge is never a member, is never the head of the delimitation commission, by the way. Okay? So don't think about it that way. Let it be. In rare cases might be the case, but the sitting Supreme Court judge cannot be a member of the delimitation commission. If it's a retired judge, that is only to create that amount of transparency. In the same way, a retired Chief Justice can become the chairperson of NHRC. Does that mean judiciary is a part of NHRC? The amount of effort that goes into simplifying these things so that you understand it better, and how inconsiderate you guys are to just break the flow of the class because some of you don't understand basic concepts of behavior and courtesy and then want to become glorious civil servants. Absolutely unpardonable. Anyways, so till 2026, we'll see the 1971 population, which is going to be the base. We're hoping that in 2026, we're going to change the base year. And obviously, if you compare 1971 population to the 2011 census, we will understand that at some point of time or another, and this is very important and extreme, that from 1971 to 2011, the number of seats is also going to increase because the population is also going to increase. 1971 to 2011, there is a magnificent increase in the population of this country. So in 2026, when we're going to keep, say for example, hypothetically, the 2011 census as the base year for it, then in such a scenario, and in simple that scenario, the number of seats should obviously increase in the Lok Sabha and increase in the Rajya Sabha. It is estimated that we may have about 1,000 MPs in the Lok Sabha and say about 500 approximately in the Rajya Sabha. And our current parliament does not have the infrastructure capacity to house these many. So this is one of the reasons why Central Vista makes sense, why a new parliament may make sense, because you would want to house more number of people. अब समझ में आया कि ये बात कहाँ से शुरू हुई और कहाँ खत्म हुई. Of course, There are also other reasons that these are older buildings, and then there are also other reasons where we can say that the buildings are rented, and the central government has to pay thousands of crores of rent every year. And there are counter arguments that also say that if you have all ministries in one building, there's going to be a security risk and so on and so forth. But again, these are things that of course are argumentative, but there is a reason here. There is a important reason here. And also I must take this opportunity to apologize to Shashi if I was rude to you, but you must understand, stopping somebody in the middle of the class, in the flow of it, is not right. I'm sorry if I was harsh to you, but please ask questions when there is a point, there is a need, there is a context to. Don't unnecessarily butt in. Sorry if it was out of line, but I understand my mistake. I hope you understand yours. चलिए, are we clear on this? Do we understand this? ये समझ में आया कि क्वांटम क्या है, area of constituencies क्या है, what is the role that census plays, right? So this is how it is done. Okay, understood? All right. Now, when I put it pan India, that means the whole country. You will have to figure out the number of seats for the Lok Sabha, then the number of seats for each state and union territory for Lok Sabha, right? These are the two important discussions that will happen because of the census, and all of this will depend on the census, which is currently 1971, which will change till 2026, right? So stuff like that. That's the whole pan-India approach. So now we would have understood the role. We now would have understood the role of census. Okay. So that's the second part of basic electoral concepts, the role of the population. Okay. Now that we've understood this, we will now move to understanding the outcomes. This is important. Okay, the outcomes. Who decides how does one win? Now, thank you, Basim. Now let's understand this. Again, very sorry, Shashi. I was in that real flow of that discussion. I'm feeling very bad for Shashi. Shashi, sorry. Okay. Anyways, chalo. माफ कर देना यार. Chalo. Let's look at outcomes. Okay. Let's understand this. Now, when you are writing this exam for the UPSC, you don't have to, and please understand, it's very important. You don't have to get, for example, 100 out of 100. You have to get more marks than everybody else. Isn't that the case? More marks than everybody else, right? You don't need to get 100 out of 100 in this exam. You need to get more marks than everybody else to clear this exam, to top this exam. So All India Rank 1, as you would know, each year does not have full marks in all the subjects. All India Rank 1 has more marks than all other candidates who have also appeared in this exam. Right? More marks than all other candidates who would have also appeared in this exam. Okay? Same applies here also. This means that if this is an exam, then you also have elections, and elections have votes. So here it does not mean that you get all the votes. What it means here is that you get more votes than everybody else. You get more votes than everybody else. Suppose there is an election where 10 votes are casted, and let us say there are 4 candidates, A, B, C, and D. A got 4 votes, B got 3 votes, C got 2 votes, and D got 1 vote. Okay, okay. Understood this? 4, 3, 2, and 1. You add this up, it is 10. 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 10. Now, according to this principle, A will be declared the winner of the election because A has more votes than everybody else. A has more votes than everybody else. And this process is called first past the post system. This process is called first past the post system. Whoever, and this is a race, this is the final post, whoever has crossed the post first past the post system. This format of election is used for Lok Sabha, is used for state legislative assemblies, also used for local self-government, also partially used for MLC elections, but mostly it is a lower house setup. You need more votes than everybody else. This is called first past the post system. Now, of course, there is a problem here. The problem here is that this person A, while still has more votes than everybody else, still represents 40% of the vote share. That means only 40% of the people wanted A, and if you combine B, C, and D, 60% of the people did not want A, right? 60% of the people did not want A, but 40% just wanted A, which means this first past the post system is very relative in nature. In fact, it is a morally subjective principle of elections, right? And this is true for almost all elections. For example, the BJP right now has 303 seats out of, say, 543 seats in the 17th Lok Sabha. And in each of these seats, let's say this is seat number 1, there were 10 voters. 40% voted for that one seat out of 303 seats. That means 60% did not want the BJP. Okay, so when you calculate the average from seat number 1 to seat number 303, the average voting percentage is not even 50%. That is not even half of the people of this country from a seat by seat basis want the BJP. But democracy is the law of averages. Democracy is democracy. So, well, it is beautiful, and this is why we do it. Which is why later in election reforms, I will teach you that one of the reforms which was suggested by the Election Commission was that you should have a re-election of the top 2 who get vote shares, right? A re-election of the top 2 who get the vote shares. The counter to that recommendation is that it is going to be extremely expensive, and it is going to be extremely cumbersome and logistically, a nightmare. And you guys are the ones who conduct these kind of elections in the first place. So this is how it is. This is how it should be, and this is our larger discussion. Okay, this is our larger discussion, right? So we figured out this, we figured out our outcomes, we figured out first past the post system. Now let us figure out the other way, right? The other way. One is this, the other way. The other way is, one is you require more votes than everybody else. The second way is you require most votes. You require most votes, which means you require more than 50% of the total votes. ये नहीं है तो आप नहीं है. This is a process that we use for our presidential elections also. Now, it is going to be very difficult to get 50% of the total votes because any number of people can contest. So what happens is, to get this, we use a method called single transferable vote. We use a method called single transferable vote. A very simple method. Suppose there are 4 candidates, right? Now what was happening here? You and I went to the EVM. No matter what button we pressed, if you listen to the conspiracy theorists, they will say not one, but whatever button you press, A will only get pressed, okay, A will only get pressed. So you don't get to choose, you don't get a rank order. My first preference A, second B, C, D. This is not like you're ordering, asking a friend to bring you, this is not like you're asking a friend to bring you this is not like our friend bringing you, food from a restaurant. That acha, noodles nahi mile to fried rice le aana, fried rice nahi mile to Manchurian le aana. You're not giving an order of preference here. You want A and A is what you're going to get. Right? Because as long as A is getting more votes than everybody else, that's how it works. However, in this case, you get to make a preference. All of us, when we go and vote, our voting paper, our ballot paper will say A, B, C and D rank in order of preference. Let us say you say A is my first preference, B is my second preference, C is my third preference, D is my fourth preference. Okay. Similarly, somebody else will say A is my second preference, B is my first preference, C is my fourth preference, D is my third preference. Everybody has their own ways, they can vote accordingly, right? Then they will add all the first preference votes. Let us say there were 4 people who gave A as their first preference, 3 people who gave B as their second preference, 2 people who gave C as their first preference. 4 people gave A as their first preference, 3 people gave B as their first preference, 2 people gave C as their first preference, 1 glorious individual gave D as their first preference. Now, if there are a total of 10 such votes, A will require 6 votes to win. But nobody has 6 votes. So what you will do is, you'll take out the vote of D. You'll take out that vote of D where some glorious individual has given D as its first preference. This is survival of the fittest, the Darwinian theory, right? So you are going to eliminate D from the race because D is never going to make it. And you take out that vote that D got. Obviously D had the first preference. Let us say A had the second preference, B had the third preference, and C had the fourth preference. So you will cancel out D and add D's vote to the second preference. Chalo, chowmein nahi mili, rice to le aana. So this person who had given D as their first preference had given A as the second preference. So A gets 5 votes now, B 3, 2, 1. This is the second round of voting. You still require 6. Now D has been eliminated, so there is no D anymore. There is no D anymore. D has been eliminated from the race. Now who has the least number? C has the least number, which means we are looking at the 2 votes that somebody has given, and in both of these votes, C is their first preference. C is their first preference. Let us say in one case A was the second preference, in one case B was the second preference. In one case B was the third preference, A was the third preference. Let us say D was here, D was here. Even if D was the second preference, then we will move to the third preference because D has been eliminated. So you look at who your second preferences were. One of the persons gave A as the second preference, one gave B as the second preference. So you add 1 vote to A, you add 1 vote to B, you eliminate C. So C has done a vote donation to A and B. Now A has 6, B has 4. You've reached the magic number. A is now declared the winner. Okay. A has been declared the winner. So this is what is called a single transferable vote. This is what is called a single transferable vote. जिसका को कम से कम वोट मिला है, सिंगल ट्रांसफरेबल ऑलवेज वर्क्स ऑन ए प्रेफरेंस सिस्टम. उसके बिना आप ये कर ही नहीं सकते, नहीं तो 50% आपके पास पहुंचेगा ही नहीं. Unless you have only two candidates, and you can never have just two candidates. You cannot restrict the number of people having two candidates. Are we clear on this? Do we understand this? Yes. Sure. Good. So now we figured out the outcomes, right? Now we have figured out the outcomes. So what all have we understood so far? So far we've understood certain basic principles. We've understood direct and indirect elections, electorate and electoral college. Then we've understood how population is the base for elections and the role of the census. We've understood the difference between quantum of seats and area of constituencies, and changing the area of constituencies is called delimitation. Then we've understood our base census figures. Then we've understood how do we understand elections from their outcomes. There are two methods: first past the post, and then of course there is a majority system or a single transferable vote. So we figured this out. You can take a 5-minute break now, and then we will continue with the rest of our class. All right. Okay. Distribution process is whoever has the least amount of votes, their second preference is given their vote and they are eliminated from the election race. Now we will understand the next concept in elections called the value of a vote or the value of votes. Now, in the case of first past the post elections, extremely important, right? In the case of first past the post elections, very important, right? When you have to get more votes than everybody else, it is a very simple and a logical thing to do that one person's vote will be counted once. One person's vote will be counted once. Okay. This is usually how it happens when we vote, when we go and vote for Lok Sabha or state legislative elections, our vote is counted once. One person, one vote. But when we look at, say, the majority system, when we look at getting most votes and we look at getting more than 50% votes, this could be one scenario. Or you are looking at any form of indirect election. In that scenario, sometimes, now in most of these cases, you will see that there is an electoral college. We discussed this. And in that electoral college, you already have a selected bunch of voters. They are nothing but, say, in a presidential election, you have MPs and MLAs. In a Rajya Sabha MP election, you have MLAs, right? Now, what will happen here is one vote casted may be counted more than one time. One vote casted may be counted more than one time. I'll explain this to you through an unrelated example. For example, in India, we have the system of kitty parties. So what is a kitty? Kitty is, let us say, person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4, person 5. All of them are going to contribute a certain amount of money. Let us say person 1 contributed 100 rupees, person 2 contributed 500, person 3 contributed 1000, person 4 contributed again 500, and person 5 contributed, let us say, 900 rupees. So this is 1000, 2000, 3000. The kitty has 3000 rupees now. 5 people have contributed 3000 rupees, right? Okay. Now, let us say person 1, let us say person 2 has an emergency, some kind of necessity, some kind of an emergency, and person 2 requires some money, right? Now person 2 has given 500 rupees and the total kitty is 3000, right? So 5 ones are 5, and what is 5 divided by 30? 6 5s are 30, 5 6 are 30. Which means person 1 has contributed 1/6 of the kitty, right? 1/6 of the kitty. So the amount that person 2 can borrow from the kitty would be in proportion to its contribution, right? The amount of money that person 2 can borrow from the kitty would be in proportion to person two's contribution, right? Some maths. Person two can't say, give me all the 3,000 rupees now. You haven't contributed that much to actually claim that amount, right? This is exactly how the IMF works. If you think about it, this is the IMF. Country 1, country 2, country 3, ऐसे करके. Country 1, country 2, country 3, country 4, country 5, country 6, country 7, country 8, right? That is how they contribute. This is determined. The amount of money, for example, country 4 can borrow from the IMF depends on the contribution made by country 4. These are called quotas and also referred to as special drawing rights. So the amount of money a country can borrow from the IMF is in multiples of the amount of money that the country had contributed to the IMF, right? Similarly, if this is money and banking, then this is democracy and population. So the number of times a person's vote would be counted would depend on the population of the region that this person is represented, right? Will depend on the population of the region the person is represented, right? So for example, let us say in a presidential election, the number of times, we'll cover this, a UP MLA's vote is counted. Maybe let us say if the one vote is X, it is actually counted, if I'm not wrong, 203X, right? Or 208, sorry. It is counted 208 times. The same vote is counted 208 times. But let us say a Meghalaya MLA's vote or an Arunachal, let us say an Arunachal Pradesh MLA's vote will be counted 8 times. Because the population of Arunachal Pradesh depends on the value of the vote of Arunachal Pradesh MLA. This is also true for UP MLA. ये समझ में आया? That the number of times a person's vote is being counted, that is called a value vote. And it always, directly or indirectly, it depends on the population of the area. Okay? Understood? So this is called a value vote system. This is called a value vote system. Are we clear on this? ये समझ में आया? पक्का? This usually happens, this value vote system mostly happens in indirect elections, not in direct election. Okay? This value vote system mostly happens in indirect elections. Alright? We'll do this through the presidential election so you'll understand it better. But ये broad concept समझ में आया? That the number of times a person's vote is counted will depend in an indirect election on the population also, right? To create some sort of standardization. Okay? Understood this? Yes or no? Understood this or not? Very good. ओके, नमन को नहीं आया। नमन भाई, बड़ा सिंपल हिसाब किताब है। नमन, इट्स अ वेरी सिंपल एक्सरसाइज, प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड दिस। इसको ऐसे समझ लो, लेट्स सपोज MLAs have to vote in a presidential election. Okay? Now, when MLAs have to vote, they will obviously represent each specific state. The number of times a UP MLA's vote will be counted, the number of times a UP MLA's vote will be counted will depend on the population of UP. बस इतना समझ लो, ठीक है? इसको हम प्रैक्टिकली करके देखेंगे, so it will be easy. Okay, we'll do this practically. All right. There is nothing called an interstate constituency. Now, once we have understood all of this, right? एक बार quickly, we've understood all of this. We've understood from the point of view of the formats of elections, the base of elections, the outcome of elections, and how the votes are counted. Now, let us make this on a large table. I call it the election spectrum or the periodic table of elections. Okay, the election spectrum or the periodic table of elections. Right, the election spectrum or the periodic table of elections. So let's understand what is it that we are referring to. Suppose we draw one straight line. Okay, we draw one straight line and we try and plot the kind of elections that we are referring to. Okay, on one end you have the Lok Sabha and the state legislative elections. Okay, on the other end you have something called the presidential elections. Okay, something called your presidential elections. Right? Now, somewhere in the middle you have two very interesting concepts. First is here, and of course the second is here. Both of these will have, say for example, here Rajya Sabha elections, and you will have here vice presidential elections. Vice presidential elections. Okay, just give me a second. Now, Lok Sabha elections are, for example, direct elections. Presidential elections are indirect elections. Vice presidential elections are indirect elections. ये हमें समझ में आ रहा है. राज्यसभा elections are also indirect elections. Lok Sabha and state legislative systems have first past the post system. First past the post system. Minimum of you need more votes than everybody else. Presidential systems are a majority system. You require most votes here. You require most votes here, right? Most votes. Okay, most votes. Now, Rajya Sabha elections have a vote value. You require a minimum number of votes needed for each Rajya Sabha seat representing each state. ये हम आराम से बाद में डिटेल में करेंगे. Okay, like a minimum number of votes that depends on each seat representing each state, right? And vice presidential elections again are on the basis of most votes, right? Most votes. Now here in this case, sorry, in this case, one person, one vote. Here, one person, more than one vote. Here also, one person, maybe more than one vote. Here also, one person, maybe more than one vote. Because these are all forms of indirect elections. Okay? Indirect elections. समझ में आ रहा है? So our focus right now is here. Now, let's understand an extremely important concept, which is when a person is voting, is this a secret vote or is it an open vote? Okay. Is it a secret vote or is it an open vote? Which means, do you have to disclose who you have voted for by law? By law, आपने अपने मन से किसी को बता दिया वो आपका प्रॉब्लम है. But do you have to disclose who you have voted for? So, all elections except Rajya Sabha, all elections except Rajya Sabha elections are secret ballot. When you and I go vote, when people are MLAs and MPs are voting for the president, for vice president, these are secret ballots. They just go press a button and come back. Informally, internally, they can tell whoever they want to vote for. But there is no law compulsorizing it. That's the difference between a secret ballot and an open ballot. Which means Rajya Sabha has an open ballot, but this is what is called limited openness. This is what is called limited openness, which means, for example, let us say we are talking about, say there are 2 seats of UP which are vacant in Rajya Sabha. So the Legislative Assembly of UP is going to have an election for these 2 seats. People will come and say that we want to vote, all of that, and then the MLAs will start voting. Now there will be a ballot box, right? And there will be a party representative standing right next to the ballot box. Suppose BJP at the center, so obviously, and BJP in UP, so you would want the BJP candidate to be, like anybody who's from the BJP should also be sent as a Rajya Sabha MP from UP. This does not mean that an MLA will be sent. It just means that anybody that BJP wants. Let's say there is this person A. Now all BJP MLAs have to vote for A, obviously. So when you go and vote, when you give the vote in favor of A, there'll be a BJP party representative here, usually called the whip for that matter. Basically, the MLA will come before putting the vote, will say, this is my vote, see, this is my vote, see, BJP, dal do, हाँ, dal, bas. So the only people who know who's voted is the party and the MLA. This is called limited openness. Okay, so it's not that it's publicly known, it is known but to a limited set of people. So this is how you look at it. This is how you understand it. Okay, understood? Now, as far as our laws are concerned, for presidential and vice presidential elections, of course, the constitution gives you the basic provisions, and then you also have the Presidential and the Vice Presidential Elections Act. Elections Act of 1952. Elections Act of 1952. Then for Lok Sabha and for Rajya Sabha, again, you have certain basic eligibility criteria in the constitution, but they are largely governed by the Representation of Peoples Act. The Large Representation of Peoples Act. Similarly, state legislative assemblies and councils, your composition and eligibility is in the constitution, but your detailed procedure is in the Representation of Peoples Act. Okay. And as far as elections in union territories are concerned, we understand there are two kinds of union territories. One, union territories with legislatures, union territories without legislators. Now, both of them are going to have Lok Sabha constituencies for sure, right? And the ones with legislature are also going to have state legislatures, or they're basically going to have legislatures. So there's going to be a legislator here, and there's of course going to be a Lok Sabha constituency. For example, Delhi has Lok Sabha constituencies. It also has Delhi Legislative Assembly constituencies. Whereas Daman and Diu and Dadar and Nagar Haveli only have Lok Sabha constituencies. They do not have assemblies because they don't have a legislature. So they are not represented in the Rajya Sabha, they don't have assemblies, and therefore they don't have councils. We've sort of covered this before. Every part of India will be represented in the Lok Sabha. It's a central house. Union territory or not does not matter. The difference is, in the case of union territories, the parliament has the powers to enact a separate law. The parliament has the powers to enact a separate law. The parliament has not, and the Representation of Peoples Act applies here. So that is usually not a problem. Okay, understood this, right? But the parliament still can make laws, which is why, for example, in Delhi, you would have heard of the Government of the National Capital of Delhi, which got recently amended, where the Government of Delhi means the Lieutenant Governor. We'll cover that in center-state relations. But broadly, this is the ecosystem. This is how it is done. This is the election spectrum. Okay? This is the election spectrum, or this is what is called the periodic table. Alright? Now, I'll give you a minute to note this down, and then we'll start with the rest. Okay. Now let us start. We're now going to do a comparative understanding of the president and the governor. Okay, let's start. So, of course, we will have the president and we will have the governor. The first basic difference is the president is an elected office and the governor is an appointed office. Okay? The first basic difference is the governor is an appointed office, whereas the president is an elected office. Pushpendra, if the parliament wants, they can make a separate law for UT elections. They haven't, and the Representation of People's Act applies to them. Okay? Now, president is an elected office and governor is an appointed office. The second and extremely important concept here is the president by law is an apolitical office. By law is an apolitical office. When we say the president by law is an apolitical office, what is that supposed to mean? It is supposed to mean that once you become the president of India, then under no circumstances can you officially be a part of any political party till the time you are the president of India. You will have to formally resign. You will have to formally resign if you are a part of any political party from that party. As far as governor is concerned, there is no law that says that the governor has to be apolitical, but you are expected to be politically neutral. You are expected to be politically neutral, right? There is no law that says you have to be apolitical, but you're expected to be politically neutral, a lot like the speakers of our houses. Okay? Understood? Which is why there is a lot of problem with the appointment of governors. We will discuss this in the Singhal case of 2010 and all of those things. We'll come to that later. But itna pre ke liye bahut hai. Clear? Okay? All right. We move to the next part. Simple enough. Which means the president has to be chosen by some people. It is an indirect election. We will do this in a lot of detail because there are dedicated means questions also explain the process of election to the president. It's an indirect election. This indirect election will comprise of an electoral college, and this electoral college will consist of multiple streams. First, state legislative assemblies and union territories with legislatures, they will participate, but only elected members, not nominated members. We don't have nominated members anymore any further now, but just in case, because now the forthcoming will not. So recently Bengal, when it had its legislative assembly election, there are no nominated members because that nomination criteria of Anglo-Indians has been eliminated through a very recent constitutional amendment. And second, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, again, only elected members and not nominated members. These are the people who participate in a specific way. Their votes are collected. Then, on the basis of their votes, is decided on the distribution. So, in both of these cases, we are going to have a value vote system. Their vote will be counted more than X number of times. This, for the states and union territories, will depend on the population, and here this will depend on the value votes of 1. We'll come to that later, don't worry. This is a value vote system, and of course, because it's an indirect election, this will require more than 50% of the total votes, which means we're going to look at a single, we've discussed this before, transferable voting process, right? Single transferable voting process. Okay, simple enough. This is how it's going to work. The key to note here is that in the election, nominated MPs and MLAs do not participate. Do not participate because of rule number 1 that we have discussed in our earlier classes, democratic mandate. When you yourself have not won an election ever, you can't dare to think of trying to participate and, in the first and the highest constitutional office of the country. Okay? Clear? So this is important. We understand this. Now, as far as the governor is concerned, we were discussing this in the beginning of our class. As far as the governor is concerned, the governor is formally appointed by the president. बहुत simple बता रहा हूँ मैं. On the binding advice of Council of Ministers. This is the law. Now the convention is, this is nowhere in the constitution. This is a customary practice. This is so that the states feel good. This is a reflection of rule number 2, which is center stronger than the states. We've discussed this. That the president will consult the chief minister of the concerned state. The president will consult the chief minister of the concerned state. This is conventional, this is customary, this is nowhere in the constitution. Pre में सवाल आ सकता है that under the constitution, the president has to consult the CM before appointing the governor. That would be an incorrect option. It is nowhere in the constitution. The constitution just says this much: appointment by the president on the binding advice of the Council of Ministers. Any advice, the president has zero discretionary powers of its own. Everything the president does has to be on the advice of the Council of Ministers. Okay? Understood? So this is the process, right? This is the process. Now, let's go a little ahead. President, governor. Now that we've understood this, let's understand the next part, which is, this is how you become. The question is, are there any qualifications whatsoever? Are there any, some eligibility criteria. There is, but it's a simple one. In both cases, you have to be a citizen. It doesn't matter how you become a citizen by any form or by any way, it does not matter. By any way, this was actually in the prelims also this year, that in India, it does not matter how you become a citizen, as long as you're a citizen, you're as a citizen as anybody else. Okay, now minimum years here is 35, minimum years here is 35. These are the common qualifications. Now the only difference is, because the president will have the powers to promulgate, an emergency, right? In such a scenario, the president himself, herself, or themselves, and because emergencies are essentially centralization of parliamentary functions, and you are the first office of the country, the president must be eligible to contest a Lok Sabha election, which basically means must be a registered voter in any constituency in the country. That is all that it means. Don't worry about this too much, this is too technical. The fun part, and this is where it gets very interesting, is actually the age. Okay. Now let's understand. Age qualifications always have something to do with work experience, right? Age qualifications always have something to do with work experience. For example, you will only be eligible for central deputation, which is in the news these days. You're only eligible for central deputation after almost a decade of working in the states. No All India Services officer or no central or All India Services officer is eligible for a central deputation, which means working directly under Government of India as a part of one of the ministries, until you have spent around a decade. No matter who you are, no matter how good or bad you are, you must have had at least under all circumstances, at least 10 years of, on an average, work at the states. Right? Of course, there can be exceptions here or there, but this is the rule. You can't break this rule under ordinary circumstances. Why? Because 10 years of work experience at the states has given you enough understanding. You have seen subdivisions, you have seen districts, you have seen state secretariat, you have understood the entire ecosystem. Now you will understand the functioning of Government of India better. Now you are ready. Correct? Very good. So your work experience determines age-related qualifications or time-related qualifications. Now think about it. In politics, in public offices, your work experience is actually nothing but election cycles. The more elections that you have witnessed, it does not matter if you won an election or lost an election or participated in it. आप में और मेरे में क्या फर्क है? अनुभव का फर्क है. I was alive when Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister of India, right? That is why but you only hear about Jawaharlal Nehru, right? I was alive when Warren Hastings was in India, but you hear about Warren Hastings or Robert Clive or any of these guys. So the difference between you and me is age, right? Now I am 200 years old, so I have 200 years of knowledge than you. That's the only difference, because I've just lived longer, I've seen a lot more, right? That is it. And that's the basic explanation to most things. So if this is it and this is the basic explanation to most things, see the magic. For Lok Sabha and state legislative elections, you need minimum 25 years. Add one more election cycle, 5. मतलब 5 साल की दुनिया और देखी. So Rajya Sabha and state legislative councils, you need 30. इसके ऊपर जाना है, one more election cycle, because this is your work experience. You have witnessed one more election. आपने बस दुनिया 5 साल होते हुए देखते हुए देखी है. And this is 35, which is president and governor. आप कभी नहीं बोलोगे 25, 30, 35. This is an arithmetic progression of plus 5 because 5 is an election cycle. This is why the years are 25, 30 and 35. समझ में आया? Clear on this? Yes. Understood this? Okay? Okay, very good. Now we understand the next part. Very so here of course none of this applies. You don't have to worry about ages and everything because it's an appointed office. Now, एक होता है appointment, एक होता है oath. Oath is nothing, and oath is a symbolic gesture. Please understand. Oath is you formally taking charge of the office, you formally accepting the office. You're a public office, so you have to take a public oath, right? And that public office and that public oath, this is exactly what it is going to be, right? Very simple. The oath to the President of India is given by the Chief Justice of India or the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but the oath to the governor is given by the respective Chief Justices of the respective High Courts. This is nothing but a logistically convenient measure, because if the president spends half of his time giving oaths to 28 states and governors of 28 states, where will you spend the rest of your time, right? मतलब महीना भर तो ओथ ही में जाएगा, ऐसे कैसे चलेगा? So ठीक. और if the chief justice spent his time, तो एक महीना chief justice ओथ ही दिला रहे. समझ लो एक महीने का जुडिशियल डिले सुप्रीम कोर्ट में कितना होता है, राइट? इमेजिन. सो दैट इज व्हाई. सो ओथ टू द प्रेसिडेंट is given by the Chief Justice of India, and oath to the governor is given by the Chief Justice of the High Court. Now, I will spend about half an hour tomorrow, 45 minutes actually, on this. This is my favorite topic in President. I will teach you the presidential election through a very simple unitary form method. Now, I need you to carry calculators with you tomorrow, or at least on your mobile phones or anything, keep a calculator with you. We are going to perform a live presidential election in class tomorrow. A live, मतलब live. आप calculate करोगे, you are going to be the Election Commission of India, and I guarantee you that you will never forget it. It's that simple. ठीक है? So we're going to cover this, then cover removal, and then of course we'll move to powers. We'll finish layer 1 by tomorrow itself, and it will take us one more day maximum for layer 2, half a day for layer 2. ठीक है? Clear? Understood? All right. चलिए. Done. Okay. See you. Bye bye. Thank you.